Hello, my name is Anam Avis. I'm the founder of Peak, Parents of Estranged Adult Kids. For people of the Christian faith tradition, Lent is a time of reflection on the temptations of Jesus by the devil during his 40 days in the wilderness. To mine the spiritual richness of these temptations for us today, we must reflect on the life situation in which Jesus finds himself at that point in his life. Remember that he is about 30 years old, which would have been midlife for his time. Previous to this moment, he's led a rather ordinary life. He has a job, self-sufficient, resides in a community near his family, but also among neighbors who know him. He participates regularly in his faith community, may even have owned a home. In contrast to that life is a new one that he's about to enter. And in that life, he will be an itinerant healer preacher without a job, dependent upon the charity of others, controversial figure, loved by some, hated by others, and misunderstood even by his own family, with no place to lay his head, he says. It's difficult to imagine two lifestyles so radically different from one another. During this transition between these two lives, that Jesus experiences this maximum level of stress that leads to these three temptations. And I believe that these three temptations are not just random kinds of experiences that Jesus had because he needed to go through something very difficult. I believe that these three temptations are universal for anyone going through a major life transition, and that's why they're in the Bible. Most of us can identify these points of inflection in our lives, an event or experience that represented a major turning point. And life is different on the two sides of such moments. A beloved one dies, life goes on, but it's not the same life. There is before the divorce and after the divorce, before the cancer and after the cancer, before the accident and after the accident. For the estranged parent, life also divides sharply into two lives. There is the life before the estrangement, filled with memories of bibs and baby food, crawling and walking, tearful hugs and wet kisses, and teacher conferences and band concerts. And then there's the life afterwards, tense, distant, silent. And between these two lives lies this deeply excruciating emotional wilderness and modern versions of the same temptations that Jesus faced. In this transition, estranged parents are likely to experience these temptations, but call them by different names, like stressors or obsessions, fears, alienation, abandonment, self-doubt, confusion. Stripped of any spiritual context, these sufferings are intensified by a sense of meaninglessness. The book Lenten Daily Readings reconnects these experiences to the experience of Jesus himself. Instead of seeing them as a meaningless, random aberration visited upon the estranged, it understands them as a necessary passageway from one phase of life to another. And while we'll certainly carry forward the losses from a previous life, in our bones, there's always the promise in God of a deepened, more powerful life that lies ahead of us. This means that there is no need to go looking for additional suffering. Make a commitment to authentic, purpose-driven, zestful living, and the suffering will find you. The Lenten deprivations that we might choose, like giving up chocolate, for example, usually pale in comparison to the actual sufferings that have chosen us. If we have lived with any degree of consciousness at all, we generally have enough losses by the time we are 60 to either make or break our story, depending upon how we tell it. The peak Lenten daily readings invite us not into new sufferings, but to wrap a new story around the ones we already have. And the way we tell our story is not simply our history. It becomes our destiny, shapes how our lives are going to turn out. And so I invite you on that journey with me.